Revenue is declining at McDonald's, the fast food cornerstone many of us were virtually raised on. Even renovating locations and installing sophisticated espresso and latte equipment hasn't accomplished much to attract new patrons through the entrance. Throughout the restaurant industry, something peculiar and frankly disturbing is developing. Yet, barely anyone is discussing it openly. Simultaneously, 17 massive chains, brands everyone recognizes, are unraveling together in a manner this business has never witnessed before. This isn't about public controversies, and it can't be clarified away by the economy alone. The genuine cause traces back to decisions these corporations made about their patrons. Costs went up, servings got smaller, quality took a hit, and that's just the damage you can observe from the counter. Behind closed doors, the situation is even more concerning. Longtime loyal patrons, the very individuals who kept these brands alive for decades, have finally had enough and walked away. One chain is now buried under more than $1 billion in debt. Another burned through hundreds of millions on a flashy rebrand that collapsed almost immediately. And one major coffee powerhouse just posted a year so terrible that analysts openly labeled it a total loss. Before we go any further, pause for a moment and ask yourself, how many of these 17 chains have you personally stopped visiting? That's not a coincidence. There's a clear reason behind it, and it starts with the first company on this list. Stay with me, and by the conclusion, you'll know exactly which restaurants still earn your loyalty and which ones no longer deserve a single dollar of it. Starbucks. Starbucks was never only about caffeine. It was about the routine, the mobile order you placed while brushing your teeth, the quick pickup that spared you from small talk before 9 in the morning, the familiar third space that wasn't home and wasn't work where you could sit quietly and decompress for 20 minutes. That ritual mattered. But by 2025, many Americans started calculating the costs. $6 for a basic latte, $7 if it had cold foam, $8 once you added oat milk and an extra shot. Suddenly, that casual coffee routine worked out to $40 a week, around $160 a month, and nearly $2,000 a year, all just to avoid making coffee in your own kitchen. So individuals didn't quit dramatically or make a big statement. They just showed up less. Foot traffic slowly thinned out. City locations that once had lines spilling onto the sidewalk began to show empty chairs and unused tables. And almost overnight, Starbucks, with roughly 16,000 U.S. stores and tens of billions in revenue, started to look surprisingly exposed. That's when Brian Niccol entered the picture, the executive widely credited with turning around Chipotle. In late 2024, Starbucks lured him over with a blockbuster compensation package. His first moves were bold: $1 billion restructuring plan, roughly 900 corporate jobs eliminated, and a public promise to restore the warm sit-down cafe experience. Real mugs, comfortable seating, and a return to what once made Starbucks feel special. On paper, it sounded like exactly what patrons wanted. The problem showed up in the figures. When analysts reviewed the early results in 2025, they saw weaker than expected traffic, pressure on profit margins, and only modest revenue gains. Wall Street labeled it a reset year, which is corporate shorthand for this isn't working yet. By the conclusion of 2025, the stock was down about 7% from when Niccol took over, and investors clearly weren't convinced by the comeback narrative. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Starbucks cut 900 jobs and spent $1 billion trying to fix the atmosphere. But no amount of cozy branding can undo pricing your core patrons out of the routine entirely. And then there's the menu itself, those beverages individuals used to order without a second thought. 400 to 600 calories, sugar levels that rival a donut. What felt like coffee was really dessert in a cup. Starbucks isn't disappearing, but it's no longer automatic. It's no longer the default. Now it's a decision you have to justify. And on most mornings, that justification just doesn't add up. Chipotle. Chipotle was meant to break the mold. It built its brand on real ingredients, no freezers, generous servings, and the idea that fast food didn't have to feel cheap or unhealthy. It positioned itself as the smart, fast casual alternative, the place where you could consume quickly and still feel good about the choice. And for years, that message landed. For nearly a decade, the momentum was undeniable. Office workers packed stores during lunch rushes. College students turned it into a weekly tradition. Families picked it up for dinner without the usual fast food guilt. Chipotle felt unstoppable, posting double-digit growth year after year like it had figured out something no one else had. Then 2025 arrived and the momentum stalled. Same-store revenue cooled off, and during earnings calls, executives openly acknowledged what was happening. Lower-income patrons were cutting back because a burrito meal now routinely rang up at $12 to $15. Almost immediately, social media filled with side-by-side photos showing smaller servings paired with higher costs and ever-climbing charges for extras like guacamole. The comment sections told the genuine story. Former regulars vented their frustration. I used to consume here twice a week, one wrote. Now it's twice a month, $14 for a bowl that doesn't even fill me up. Others summed it up even more bluntly. Chipotle was charging premium prices for food that felt mass-produced and rushed. The corporation tried to hold on to a premium image, but premium only works when the experience actually earns it. Standing in a long line watching someone carefully ration your rice while you mentally debate whether you can justify guacamole doesn't feel elevated. It just feels like overpriced fast food. Eventually, the fast casual favorite had to confront an uncomfortable truth. What was once marketed as an affordable, healthier burrito had quietly become a luxury purchase. And when your core promises accessibility, that kind of shift is dangerous. And let's be honest for a moment. That healthy bowl you customized can easily top 1,000 calories with sodium levels higher than 3 bags of chips. The health halo was always brighter than the nutrition facts ever were. Sweetgreen. Sweetgreen was perfectly designed for a very specific era. It catered to young professionals who wanted lunch to feel virtuous. Seasonal ingredients, minimalist bowls, sustainability messaging, and social media posts that said, "I'm doing life right." For a while, paying extra for clean sourcing and ethical branding felt justified. But by 2025, that moment had clearly passed. In a single quarter, same-store revenue dropped close to 10%. The stock plunged. Investors reacted fast and harshly because it became obvious that a business built on $18 salads doesn't hold up when its core patrons are deciding whether lunch fits into the same budget as rent. Individuals started sharing receipts online, and they weren't subtle about it. $17, $19, $22 for a bowl with some greens, a bit of chicken, and a light drizzle of dressing. The comment sections were ruthless. That's rent money in a bowl. I could consume groceries for 3 days for this. This is why I'm broke. Sweetgreen's entire identity rested on the idea that it was worth it. Cleaner, more responsible, a better choice. But when better means skipping other meals just to justify the cost, the logic collapses. The value proposition stops making sense. And here's what rarely gets acknowledged. For someone like Sarah, a 47-year-old mom trying to stretch a household budget while still feeding her children healthier food, Sweetgreen was never really on the table. The brand was aimed at someone younger, wealthier, and focused on feeding one individual, not a household of 4. From a nutrition standpoint, the bowls can absolutely be decent, but the reality is hard to ignore. 5 homemade lunches cost about the same as one Sweetgreen bowl, and when healthy food becomes financially out of reach, it stops serving the individuals who need it most. Sweetgreen didn't just lose patrons. It lost the foundation of its entire story, the idea that it was the smart choice. And once that belief cracks, everything else follows. Hooters. Let's be honest about it. Hooters was always treated like a punchline. Wings, cheap beer, sports on the televisions, and a concept individuals mostly put up with through the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, probably because our collective taste wasn't exactly refined back then. For a while, it was shrugged off as harmless fun. But eventually, the joke stopped landing. Younger generations have zero interest in bringing companions to a place where the entire business model revolves around objectifying the staff. It doesn't feel bold or provocative anymore. It just feels awkward, dated, and out of touch. So, in 2024 and 2025, Hooters began quietly shutting down dozens of locations. Publicly, the corporation blamed challenging economic conditions. In reality, the deeper problem was much simpler. The brand itself didn't age well at all. Its identity belongs to another era, and it shows. Generation Z would rather consume almost anywhere else. And even the boomers and Generation X patrons who once made Hooters a regular stop for Monday Night Football have largely drifted away. Some are paying closer attention to their health these days. Others just don't love the idea of walking into Hooters with their teenage children in tow. It feels uncomfortable in a manner it never used to. Hooters isn't really reinventing itself or finding a new lane. It's just slowly disappearing. One half-empty dining room and deserted parking lot at a time. TGI Fridays. TGI Fridays used to stand for something unmistakable. Loaded potato skins piled high, whiskey glaze slathered on just about everything. After-work happy hours with coworkers, birthday dinners where servers clapped, sang off key, and made a whole production out of it. It was noisy, cheesy, and unapologetically over the top. And somehow that was the charm. It felt like fun you could count on. By 2024, though, that energy was gone. Fridays didn't feel festive anymore. It felt tired. Then came the wake-up call. Roughly 50 U.S. locations shut down in a single restructuring move, turning what used to be Friday night gathering spots into dark, silent buildings almost overnight. Casual dining has been stuck in limbo for years, and Fridays is a perfect example of the problem. Households today tend to choose one of two paths, either quick, cheap fast food or higher quality local spots that feel worth the splurge. Fridays sits awkwardly in between. It's too pricey to feel like a bargain and too bland to feel memorable. The atmosphere hasn't meaningfully changed since around 2007. The decor feels frozen in duration. The menu tries to cover every craving imaginable and ends up excelling at none of them. And those famous loaded appetizers? Some of them pack more sodium into a single plate than you're supposed to consume in an entire day. TGI Fridays once felt like a built-in celebration, a place where going out felt like an event. Now it feels more like a corporation searching its own past, trying to remember what made individuals love it to begin with. Applebee's. Applebee's used to be everywhere. You saw it in strip malls, off-highway exits, and right in the middle of small-town main streets. It was the place you chose when you didn't feel like cooking, but also didn't want to spend 10 minutes debating dinner. It wasn't exciting, but it didn't have to be. It was dependable. It existed. That used to be enough. It isn't anymore. In 2024, corporation leadership shut down around 30 locations and openly warned investors that more closures were on the way. What that really signaled was something deeper. Entire communities had quietly moved on. The default household dinner spot just wasn't Applebee's anymore. The reasons aren't complicated. Nothing about Applebee's feels memorable. The menu is painfully generic, the decor is aggressively beige, the experience is fine. And fine isn't enough to get individuals off the couch when streaming services are queued up and delivery apps are 2 taps away. Younger diners want places with personality, local flavor, and something worth posting about. Older patrons are paying more attention to health, cutting back on fried foods and seed oils, and the menu doesn't really meet them there either. Applebee's isn't giving either group a strong reason to choose it. The chain isn't imploding in some dramatic headline-grabbing manner. It's fading instead, slowly losing relevance, one closed location and one skipped household dinner at a time. The neighborhood grill lost its neighbors, and no one seems particularly interested in rediscovering it. Quick pause before we move on. How many of these first 6 chains have you personally stopped visiting in the past couple of years? Be honest. Starbucks, Chipotle, Sweetgreen if you ever went in the first place, Hooters, TGI Fridays, Applebee's. If you're counting 3 or more, you're not an outlier. You're the majority. If that sounds like you, drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. All right, next up, the brands that were supposed to be untouchable. Burgers, noodles, pizza, steak. Let's observe how that turned out. Red Robin. Red Robin once owned a very specific slice of American household life. It was the go-to birthday dinner. Not McDonald's, which felt too cheap, and not a steakhouse, which felt like too much. Red Robin sat perfectly in the middle. Big burgers, bottomless fries, a brownie sundae, and an awkward birthday clap from the staff while your child beamed like it was the best night ever. For a long duration, that formula worked. By 2025, though, Red Robin found itself stuck in what analysts politely label turnaround mode and what everyone else recognizes as a slow, grinding decline. After years of remodels, menu tweaks, and strategic pivots, patrons still aren't coming back. Foot traffic continues to disappoint. Same-store revenue keeps trailing expectations. At the heart of it all is an identity problem. Red Robin isn't inexpensive enough to go head-to-head with Five Guys. It doesn't have the buzz or modern appeal of places like Shake Shack, and it's nowhere near fast enough to compete with true fast food. It lands squarely in the middle. Average cost, average velocity, average experience. And average no longer motivates households to walk through the entrance. Parents today make clearer trade-offs. They'll either save money and go cheaper, or they'll spend a little more on something that feels genuinely special. Red Robin doesn't clearly win either choice. And yes, it matters, even if it's uncomfortable to admit. Those massive burgers paired with endless fries often lead to a heavy food coma afterward. For parents in their 40s and 50s who are watching their weight or just trying to keep up with energetic children, that once fun household night now comes with hours of sluggish regret. That's a tough association to shake. Red Robin has been talking about a comeback for years, but patrons have already rewritten their mental shortlist of where to consume. And once a restaurant gets mentally replaced, no amount of fresh paint or new signage is enough to bring individuals back. Noodles & Company. Noodles & Company set out to be the alternative for individuals who didn't want another burger. The pitch was variety: pasta dishes, Asian-style noodles, mac and cheese bowls, comfort food with options, all wrapped in a fast casual format that felt a little different from the usual lineup. On paper, it made sense. The problem is what happens when your entire menu revolves around big bowls of carbohydrates. The business mathematics is unforgiving. Pasta itself is inexpensive, but preparing it at scale, cooking, customizing, plating, and serving adds genuine costs. You can't realistically charge $15 for spaghetti without patrons pushing back. But at $9, the margins barely exist. There's no sweet spot. That squeeze started showing up in store closures. In 2024, the corporation shut down about 20 locations. Not long after, another 15 to 20 closures were announced. Nearly 40 restaurants gone, not because of controversy or bad press, but because entire regions simply didn't make financial sense anymore. Rising labor and ingredient costs collided with low average ticket costs, and there was no manner out of the pressure. Patrons also had plenty of alternatives. Local Italian and Asian restaurants offered better value or better quality. Others realized they could make pasta at home for a fraction of the cost with very little effort. And for households paying closer attention to health and blood sugar, oversized bowls of refined noodles smothered in cream sauce weren't exactly helping the case. Noodles & Company tried to carve out a unique lane in fast casual dining. The issue wasn't the idea, it was that the niche couldn't support the rent. Mod Pizza. Mod Pizza felt like a glimpse into the future, at least for a while. Personal-sized pizzas, unlimited toppings, and quick service gave individuals total control over their meal. You could customize every detail, and the whole experience felt fresh, modern, and just different enough to be exciting. Jump ahead to 2025, and the tone has changed. MOD is now popping up in industry reports for a very different reason: store closures and efforts to trim underperforming locations. The fast casual pizza craze has cooled off, and the cracks in the model are hard to ignore. The challenges stack up fast. Rents are high, ingredients aren't cheap, labor costs keep climbing. And meanwhile, delivery giants are offering large pizzas for half the cost of MOD's single personal pie. When that comparison hits, the appeal starts to fade. The bigger lesson? Customization sounds like a business strategy, but it's really just a feature. And when that feature costs twice as much as a couponed pizza from Domino's, most patrons stop caring how many toppings they can pile on. There's also the health angle. Individual pizzas loaded with processed meats and heavy cheese still add up to a meal packed with inflammatory ingredients. Not exactly what health-conscious diners are chasing anymore. The fast casual pizza gold rush had its moment. For a while, everyone struck something shiny, but now the easy gold is gone, and what's left isn't nearly as valuable as it once looked. Outback Steakhouse. Outback Steakhouse used to be the go-to special night out for suburban households. Anniversaries, birthdays, celebrations. This was the place you chose when you wanted to splurge a little, but not go completely overboard. And of course, there was the bloomin' onion, because apparently nothing says celebration quite like a deep-fried vegetable roughly the size of a bowling ball. That version of Outback started unraveling in early 2024. Parent corporation Bloomin' Brands announced the closure of 41 underperforming restaurants in a single move, many of them Outback locations. One press release, 41 dining rooms gone. Years of household steak night traditions wiped out almost overnight, squeezed by higher beef costs, rising labor costs, and patrons who simply stopped showing up. The reason isn't hard to figure out. A typical Outback meal, steak, bloomin' onion, sides, maybe a beverage, can easily land in the $40 to $50 per individual range. For a household of 4, that's $150 to $200 before tip. That's no longer a casual weekday dinner. That's a once-a-year indulgence, if that. Then there's the health reality. For parents paying closer attention to cholesterol and calories, the bloomin' onion alone comes with nearly 2,000 calories worth of saturated fat. Add a steak and loaded sides, and suddenly your treat night looks like a preview of an awkward doctor's appointment. What used to feel indulgent now feels risky. When nostalgia starts demanding both financial strain and physical consequences, most households quietly bow out. And that's exactly what happened. Outback isn't vanishing entirely, but the version that felt approachable, fun, and easy to justify is gone. We're halfway through now, 9 chains down, and the pattern should be obvious. None of these brands failed because of scandals or sudden disasters. They failed the same simple test. They stopped being worth it. The mathematics broke, and patrons finally said enough. The next 8 are much darker. We're talking billion-dollar bankruptcies. A brand that collapsed from 1,100 locations to nearly 0, and a logo so terrible it erased 10% of a corporation's stock value in a single week. Drop one word below. Which chain have you completely walked away from? Let's observe who gets the most votes. KFC. KFC should be cleaning up right now. Chicken is having a massive moment. Chick-fil-A has drive-through lines wrapped around buildings. Raising Cane's is opening locations faster than it can train managers. Popeyes practically broke the internet with a single sandwich. And yet somehow KFC, the original fried chicken giant, the global brand with the Colonel's face recognized almost everywhere on Earth, is losing ground in the US. In key quarters across 2024 and 2025, same-store revenue dropped by roughly 5%. 5%, at the exact moment when demand for chicken was exploding across the industry. So how does a legacy brand lose while the entire category is booming? By making things harder instead of simpler, by operating stores that feel frozen in duration while competitors feel fresh and modern, by offering a massive, confusing menu when rivals focus on doing one thing exceptionally well. Chick-fil-A sells chicken sandwiches and a consistently pleasant experience, raising Cane's sticks to chicken fingers and its signature sauce. Popeyes leans into bold flavors and cultural relevance. And KFC? It tries to do everything and none of it particularly well. The stores feel like they're stuck in 2005. The menu is overwhelming. The experience varies wildly from one location to the next. Households who once picked up buckets every Sunday have quietly started going just about anywhere else. And there's a health reckoning layered into this, too. A standard KFC combo fried in industrial seed oils coated in breading, packed with additives most individuals can't pronounce, doesn't land the same manner it used to. For adults who grew up on those weekend buckets, this isn't just about nostalgia anymore. It's a routine they're actively trying to leave behind. KFC isn't disappearing globally, but in the US, it's being overtaken by faster, simpler, more focused competitors. Brands that remembered the rule KFC itself once mastered: do one thing, do it well, and don't overthink it. Boston Market. Boston Market once stood for something that genuinely mattered. It promised home-style meals without the effort. Rotisserie chicken, genuine mashed potatoes, vegetables that actually looked like vegetables. It felt comforting and responsible, like you were still doing right by your household, even on nights when cooking just wasn't happening. By late 2024, that version of Boston Market had all but disappeared. At its peak, the chain operated more than 1,100 locations. Now only a few dozen were left barely hanging on. And the downfall wasn't slow or graceful. It was chaotic and public. Unpaid rent, lawsuits from suppliers, allegations of wage theft, states stepping in over unpaid taxes and bills, landlords padlocking restaurants, employees arriving for shifts only to find the entrances chained shut. This wasn't a corporation quietly shrinking. It was a full implosion. Boston Market collapsed under its own weight, leaving behind angry creditors, unpaid workers, and abandoned storefronts scattered across the country. So, what went wrong? Simply put, the brand never evolved. There was no meaningful digital ordering strategy, no modern marketing push, no genuine answer to a changing world. Grocery stores started selling rotisserie chickens that were cheaper, just as tasty, and far more convenient. And once that happened, Boston Market lost the very thing it was built on. The entire concept revolved around convenience. But when everyone else became faster, easier, and cheaper, Boston Market had nothing left to differentiate itself. What was supposed to be the healthier alternative to fried fast food wasn't all that clean either. Many of those wholesome meals were loaded with sodium and hidden calories tucked into sides and sauces. Now, households can make a better version at home for less money, less guilt, and without the risk of pulling into a parking lot only to find a locked entrance. Boston Market isn't limping along anymore. It's not in recovery. It's already gone. Red Lobster. Red Lobster once occupied that fancy but not too fancy lane. It was the spot for birthdays, anniversaries, and celebratory dinners, made extra memorable by those warm Cheddar Bay biscuits that somehow convinced you the night was special before the food even arrived. For years, that positioning worked. Then came May 2024. Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and almost immediately shut down 93 locations in one sweeping move. 93 restaurants gone. The filings revealed something even more staggering: more than $1 billion in liabilities. Yes, over $1 billion in debt. So, how does a nationally recognized seafood chain with hundreds of restaurants and decades of brand equity end up that deep underwater? A big part of the answer traces back to one promotion that spiraled out of control: endless shrimp. On the surface, it sounded like a win. Patrons loved the idea. Pay one cost, consume as much shrimp as you want. But the economics were a disaster. Diners routinely consumed $20 to $30 worth of shrimp while paying $10 or $12. Every refill made the losses worse. The more popular the promotion became, the faster the corporation bled cash. Layer that error on top of unfavorable supplier contracts, rising food and labor costs, and declining foot traffic, and the result was inevitable. The bankruptcy filing reads less like bad luck and more like a textbook example of compounding strategic failures. The court documents are brutal. Over $1 billion in debt, nearly 100 restaurants closed, and a single marketing gimmick that turned endless into a financial sinkhole. There's also a health angle most individuals don't consider. Many of those shrimp and pasta combinations are loaded with hidden sugars in the sauces and excessive sodium stacked on top. That special occasion meal often comes with more consequences than it's worth financially and physically. Red Lobster tried to position itself as affordable luxury, but when the luxury isn't sustainable and the affordability turns out to be an illusion, the outcome is bankruptcy. Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel isn't just a restaurant, it's a cultural fixture. The rocking chairs lined up out front. The country store packed with nostalgic trinkets you don't need, but somehow always browse. The heavy breakfast plates loaded with biscuits and gravy. For many individuals, it's comfort food mixed with road trip memories, all rolled into a single stop off the highway. In 2024, the corporation decided it was duration for a refresh. Leadership announced a roughly $700 million modernization effort that included new locations, menu updates, and a brand overhaul. The stated goal was ambitious: attract younger diners without alienating the loyal patrons who had been showing up for decades. Then in August 2025, Cracker Barrel revealed the new logo. The longtime old-timer character, the bearded man who had been part of the brand's identity for generations, was gone. The classic country store wording disappeared too. What remained was a simplified barrel and a sleek, corporate-style font that felt more like a tech startup than a roadside comfort stop. The backlash was immediate and intense. Longtime patrons flooded social media, accusing the corporation of abandoning its roots. Conservative commentators framed the change as an attack on traditional Americana. Even Donald Trump weighed in publicly, criticizing the rebrand. Investors took notice as well. The stock dropped between 7 and 11% in just a few days as the controversy spiraled. Less than a week later, Cracker Barrel hit the brakes. The corporation scrapped the new logo, reverted to the original design, and issued a public apology about listening to guests and learning from the response. 7 days. That's how long it took for a $700 million modernization strategy to crash so hard that leadership had to admit they'd fundamentally misunderstood their audience. The lesson was hard, but clear. You can't modernize a brand by deleting the very things individuals love about it. And when your core patrons stop during road trips because it feels like stepping back into 1987, trying to make the place look like a Silicon Valley startup is probably a terrible idea. One last irony worth mentioning. Those classic country breakfasts often blow past daily sodium and calorie limits before you even pull out of the parking lot. Nostalgia tastes great right up until your doctor checks your blood pressure. Tijuana Flats. Tijuana Flats was a regional Tex-Mex brand trying to survive in one of the toughest lanes in fast casual dining. It aimed to be edgier than Taco Bell, more affordable than Chipotle, and more playful than your local taqueria. On paper, that positioning sounded clever. In reality, it left almost no room for error. That margin for error disappeared in April 2024. With little warning, Tijuana Flats shut down 40 locations and filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, listing close to $19 million in debt. 40 restaurants vanished overnight. Employees arrived for shifts to find locked entrances. Regular patrons pulled into parking lots only to stare at dark windows and empty dining rooms. The collapse didn't come out of nowhere. It traced back to a major decision in 2021 when the corporation rolled out an aggressive menu expansion. New items, more complicated builds, specialized equipment. It looked exciting and ambitious, but every addition made the business more expensive to operate. Labor needs increased, food costs climbed, equipment investment stacked up. As long as traffic stayed strong, the cracks were hidden. But once patron visits softened, even slightly, the mathematics fell apart. That menu overhaul turned tacos into a losing proposition, costing more to make than the revenue they brought in. Once margins flipped upside down, there was no realistic path to recovery. Tijuana Flats ended up squeezed from both directions. It couldn't compete with Taco Bell on cost. It couldn't match local taquerias on freshness, authenticity, or flavor. And for health-conscious diners, there was no clear reason to choose it either. Many menu items leaned heavy, loaded with cheese, drenched in sauces, and oversized, failing on nutrition as much as on value. This wasn't a slow fade or a gentle decline. 40 restaurants disappeared almost instantly because a flashy menu update wrecked the economics of the entire operation. That's not a downturn, that's a wipeout. Buca di Beppo. Buca di Beppo was never subtle. It was loud, chaotic, and proudly over the top. Italian-American food served family style on enormous platters, walls packed with kitschy decor, and Frank Sinatra looping endlessly in the background. It was built for group birthdays, team celebrations, and nights that were supposed to be big, messy, and memorable. Then came 2024, Buca di Beppo filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and the financial reality was brutal. Nearly $39 million owed to its primary lender, more than $3 million in unpaid wages and benefits, millions more in overdue utility bills and vendor invoices. Employees who had worked there for years weren't getting paid. Some locations had their lights shut off. Vendors stopped delivering entirely because the checks kept bouncing. The brand that once revolved around abundance became a cautionary tale of what happens when dining rooms empty out, but expenses don't. So why did it fail? Because oversized servings and loud vibes don't keep a business alive when patrons stop showing up. Households realized they could obtain better Italian food locally for less money. Younger groups gravitated toward cleaner, more modern, social media-friendly spaces, not chaotic, cluttered dining rooms. And those massive platters stopped feeling fun once individuals started paying attention to their health. Portion distortion on that scale creates genuine metabolic stress. And for anyone trying to manage weight or energy, it stopped being quirky and started being a problem. Buca di Beppo tried to survive on volume and atmosphere alone. But when the energy fades and the volume can't outrun the debt, bankruptcy isn't a surprise. It's inevitable. And here's the bigger truth these 17 chains expose. They didn't collapse because of bad luck. They collapsed because of choices. They prioritized profit over individuals, convenience over quality, and short-term gains over long-term trust. Costs went up without quality improving. Human connection was replaced with automation. Oversized, oversalted, oversugary meals kept getting pushed while brands pretended to care about health. They chased trends and ignored the patrons who built them in the first place. When the middle class finally said, "We can't afford this anymore, and even if we could, it's not worth it," the entire system cracked. From Starbucks and its $8 lattes to Boston Market and its abandoned storefronts to Red Lobster drowning in $1 billion of debt to Cracker Barrel face-planting over a logo redesign, the message is the same. When you cost out your loyal patrons, ignore their health, and offer nothing they can't obtain cheaper or better somewhere else, it doesn't matter how iconic your brand once was, you become irrelevant. And here's what that means for you, especially if you're trying to feed a household, manage a budget, and stay healthy in 2026. Stop feeling guilty about consuming out less. You're not failing. They failed you. Stop wondering why the affordable household dinner disappeared. It didn't vanish by accident. These chains destroyed it. Stop going back to places that keep letting you down just because you used to love them. Nostalgia isn't worth your money or your health. You have better options now. Local restaurants using genuine ingredients. Cooking at home in manners that save money and leave you with more energy. Fast, casual spots that actually deliver on what they promise. These 17 chains made their decisions. Now you get to make yours. So here's what I want to know. When was the last duration you genuinely enjoyed consuming at one of these places? Not tolerated it? Not shrugged and paid anyway? Actually enjoyed it? Because that's the genuine question, isn't it? These brands didn't lose you in one terrible visit.